Greetings, listeners. I am Jelisife Villanueva, here with my partner, Carl Joseph Borja, from Section 826. And today we're going to present to you facts regarding the art movement post-war expressionism or existentialism.
After World War II, many artists rejected idealized realism and instead pursued intense, emotionally charged, often non-figurative forms. In the United States, this took shape as abstract expressionism, a movement defined by spontaneity, bold color fields, and expressive gestures that broke from traditional representation. It was an art of emotion over order, so it was very chaotic, I suppose, where each brushstroke became a declaration of personal freedom over inner conflict. Europe likewise saw similar waves of raw expression, where the trauma of war, guilt, alienation, and existential anxiety became the central themes. Artists weren't painting what they saw, they were painting what they felt in the aftermath of a shattered world. Some critics later described this as post-expressionism, a continuation of earlier expressionist impulses, but with more self-aware and fragmented approach. Artists such as Jean de and Alberto Giacometti wrestled with the grotesque, the human form, and the psychological ruins left by the war. Their work was not about beauty, but about truth, about facing pain, chaos, and the fragility of existence head on. The point wasn't prettiness, it was confrontation, honesty, and survival through creation. After the devastation of World War II, artists no longer painted to please, they painted to survive. Post war expressionism and abstract expressionism were not just about beauty or perfection, but about truth, emotion, and humanity. Every brushstroke became an act of rebellion against despair, a statement that even after destruction, creativity could still arise.
Considering the historical background of post-war expressionism in art, here are four main takeaways. Firstly, the movement originated in Europe and the United States in the late 1940s to 1950s. After the Second World War, artists looked for new ways to explore emotions and confront the devastation surrounding them. Both continents experienced not only demolished cities, but deep psychological wounds as well. In the post-war period, art became a device for survival, contemplation, and the reframing of modern creativity. Secondly, in Europe, this was referenced as Neo-Expressionism. Painters such as Francis Bacon and Jean Dubuffet made a use of dark colors, rough textures, and distorted figures to depict pain, guilt, and rebirth. The artistic narrative revealed the struggle of reconsolidating identity and reconciling the moral issues the war left behind. Thirdly, in America, it evolved into abstract expressionism. A group of painters such as Jackson Pollock, Willem de Kooning, and Mark Rothko used abstraction, color, and gesture to portray ideas of freedom as an expression of inner emotion. The size and energy of the canvases they painted shifted New York into the new center of the art world. And lastly, post-war expressionism transcended painting into sculpture and printmaking and became a social way to let out feigned fear and investigate the human condition. Through movement, color, and emotion, the creation of art became a process of healing and a recollection of the self in a world trying to recover. As for the factors that influenced the art movement of post-war expressionism, we've researched the following. First, following World War II, the world was a place marred by loss, fear, and guilt. Cities were reduced to rubble, and so too was hope. So artists began to use their art to confront the pain inflicted upon them by war in ways that words could not convey. Second, many had been questioning their existence and had lost faith due to the inhumane experiences done during and after the war. Artists resorted to feeling, chaos, and instinct to articulate the truth of what it meant to survive. Third, amid the confusion, there emerged an exploration of identity. Artists looked inward to discover who they were in a world that no longer made sense. Art became a mirror of emotion, vulnerability, and self-exploration. Fourth, with art centers in Europe demolished, New York began to emerge as a place for new beginnings. Freedom and experimentation were the essence of what was to become abstract expressionism. Lastly, earlier movements of expressionism and surrealism provided a foundation. The artists built on the ideas from these movements to depict the subconscious and depths of humans in raw, honest ways, transforming pain and destruction into a language of regeneration. The socio-political context created post-war expressionism after World War II. War and genocide exposed the failures of political systems to protect and value human life. Fascism came into full force, and millions of people were left questioning authority, justice, and moral order. Governments collapsed, and art took shape as one of the visual protests against the failures of political ideology and highlighted the violence and suffering that ideology creates in all forms. Next, the existential crisis that defined the post-war period was not only personal, but political. Citizens lost faith in national institutions, religion, and the power structures that enable war to exist. Expressionist works became a form of rebellion against propaganda, turning on blind nationalism and exposing the superfilter cost associated with the state violence in wartime. While the Cold War persisted, art became a result of politics. In the United States, abstract expressionism became synonymous with proof of a democratically free and individualistic society, a cultural weapon used to combat Soviet propaganda and censorship. Here, art turned into the political ideal, for democracy, creativity, and free expression were essential. Lastly, people in Europe developed self-consciousness. Neo-expressionist painters grappled with the moral fallout of both fascism and collaboration, their images encumbered by guilt, memory, and responsibility as they dared their nations to face what was allowed. So, expressionism in the post-war period emerged as both a political statement and a moral reckoning for the modern world.
So now let's get into the most influential artists of post-war expressionism. Jackson Pollock from the United States of America was one of the most influential figures of post-war expressionism. He pioneered abstract expressionism, a movement that broke away from traditional art to explore pure emotion and energy on the canvas. Pollock's signature drip painting technique involved laying his canvas on the floor and rhythmically splattering paint, turning art into a physical, emotional act. His masterpiece, Number 5, 1948, is a storm of tangled lines and color, chaotic yet deliberate, capturing freedom, emotion, and the restless energy of the post-war spirit. Next we have is William de Kooling, one of the leading figures of abstract expressionism. As you can see in his painting Woman 1, he blended abstraction with figuration, mixing wild brushstrokes and distorted forms to show emotion and energy. His style captured the tension between control and chaos, reflecting conflict, desire, and the raw power of the human figure. Now we have Mark Rothko, an artist who took a quieter, more spiritual approach of abstract expressionism. As you can see in his number 61, Rust and Blue, Rothko used large blocks of color to create deep emotion and reflection. His paintings weren't about objects, they were about feelings through simple forms and layered colors. He captured the silence, depth, and humanity of the post-war era. Next is John Dubuffet from France, a bold artist who rejected traditional ideas of beauty. As you can see in his work The Cow with the Subtle Nose, Dubuffet embraced what he called outsider art, raw, imperfect, and deeply human. He believed true art came from authenticity, not polish. His rough textures and earthy tones captured the grit of everyday life, showing that even imperfection can reveal something profoundly real and honest. Next is Albert Giacometti from Switzerland, a sculptor who captured the human condition like no one else. These thin, elongated figures, like man pointing, seem fragile, almost fading into space. Through sculpture, Giacometti expressed feelings of isolation and existential despair, shaping bronze into symbols of human vulnerability. His work deeply resonated with existentialist thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, who saw in Giacometti's sculptures the struggle of existence itself, lonely, searching, and profoundly human. Finally, we turn to Francis Bacon and his haunting study after Velázquez's portrait of Pope Innocent X in 1953. Rather than recreating Velázquez's portrait, Bacon deconstructed it. He studied reproductions of the original for decades, never seeing it firsthand, but he reinterpreted it with visceral intensity. In Bacon's version, the Pope is shown screaming, his face is distorted, mouth agape, yet he seems trapped, enclosed by vertical drapes or space frames that echo both curtains and bars. The purple robe seeps into the face, the skeletal head, the open jaw, and the dark background suggests decay, suffering, and existential tension. Bacon's scream is not for a spectacle, it's for confrontation. He strips away authority and ritual to reveal the fragility beneath. The painting provokes us to face silence, pain, and the void. It forces us into the shadows where power collapses and humanity bleeds through. Okay, so for our last slide, we're now going to be talking about prevalent art forms and media and post-war expressionism. Alright, so after World War II, artists were done playing it safe. The world had just seen chaos, destruction, and moral collapse. And painters wanted to get that raw emotion onto the canvas. This period, post-war expressionism, became all about the artist's psyche, emotion, and energy. Here are the main art forms that defined it. First of all is the action painting. Action painting is all about movement, big gestures, drips, splashes, and raw physicality. The act of painting itself becomes the artwork. Think Jackson Pollock throwing paint like he's in a fistfight with the canvas. They used house paint, sticks, even their hands, anything that made a mark. The point wasn't to paint an image, but to record energy and emotion in motion. Next up is the color field painting. Now on the flip side, you've got the color field painting. This stripped away all the chaos and focused on calm, immersive color. Huge, flat fields of red, blue, orange, or whatever. The idea was to make you feel though through color, not through form or gesture. Artists like Mark Rothko wanted viewers to be swallowed by color. It's not about looking at the painting, it's about being in it. Sculpture. Sculpture during this period also went through a transformation. Instead of the perfect Greek figures or traditional busts, post-war sculptors built forms that felt rough, emotional, and existential. Raw bronze, twisted steel, welded junk, whatever told the story. It wasn't just about the shape anymore. It was about the presence and tension in real space. And then there's art blood, or raw art. This came from outside, the fine art world. Self-taught creators, outsiders, psychiatric patients, children, people just creating what they wanted because they had to. John de Buffet coined the term in the 1940s and he loved it because it was pure expression. No rules, no theory, just raw emotion splashed onto anything they could find. So yeah, all these forms, action painting, color field painting, sculpture, and art brought, were different ways of screaming the same thing. Human emotion is messy, it's real, and it belongs in art. Post-war artists didn't want pretty pictures. They wanted truth on canvas, steel, or whatever they could get their hands on.
And to finally wrap up our presentation, here are our references in APA 7th edition format.